and good evening to our fellow listeners and followers. This today is August 13th at 8:25 p.m. This is Federico Lines of States Rights Radio and
Seth Hancock of Seth Hancock Reports. And tonight's episode will be a continuation of our 2024 election discussion. And we'll touch on the Trump indictment, the crowded field of politicians trying to expand the federal government to their interests. And that's the way our elections are. It's about who's going to be the most powerful, I guess. Because that's one of the things I think we've touched on in the past is that people view the government as power, and that the president is the most powerful man in the world. That's an idea that we actually need to be against. Those of us who believe in liberty and limited government, but yet Americans kind of view the president in like a positive light as the most powerful man in the world. Well, we should oppose that at every opportunity, and that's what we're going to be going through for the next little over a year with the presidential circus.
Yeah, it is, Seth, and you mentioned before the show when we were talking that over 1,000 people have now filed for the presidency of the United States in 2024. Do you know some names out there of who they are?
Well, it's hard to get there. I mean, obviously, the place I found the news that over 1,000 people had signed up. It's Sons of Liberty Media, and they basically were making the point that the media is going to tell us just a few select names that are quote unquote choices. While there's over 1,000 people who have signed up. So, it'll be very hard to find anything about, most of these people. Obviously on the Democrat side, we have Biden who's in and Kennedy who's in. I don't know if anybody else has declared for the Democrats. I'm sure there are that we haven't heard of. And that's kind of every year. There's loads of candidates that we never hear of. On the Republican side, you got Trump, you got DeSantis, you got Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, Chris Christie, Mike Pence. Over 1,000 people. Yeah, we're not going to hear much about the vast majority of them.
Yeah, that'll be average show, and then this is like the third Democratic primary where you have a challenger challenging the incumbent president, and all the behold, it's another Kennedy, like in 1980 with Ted Kennedy and Sargent Shriver. So. The only Kennedy that I admire is John F. Kennedy on his domestic policy. I would say he was pretty conservative, more conservative than Trump, more conservative than his grandnephew. I just when I see the Trumpers glorify Kennedy on what he's talking about the CIA and blah blah, and the CIA killed his uncle and all that, I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're celebrating, you're actually saying that the government is bad after Trump was in the White House. You were all praising for government control, and what are you saying now? So it's the sheer hypocrisy of the Trump movement, and then you have him now under indictment, which I know you and I have said that it's a political game, but some Iowa Republicans are claiming that it's a fascist. It's kind of like Nazi Germany, his Trump indictment, and I said to myself, Yeah, tell that to Colonel Stauffenberg that he didn't get a trial. He got a bullet in the head for saving Germany. So at least Trump is getting a trial. He's not doing anything. He's getting a trial on due process. So I don't see the similarities of that hypocrisy. And with Pence, he's the only one that's kind of not, well, with Chris Christie, but he's really not into the MAGA cult. So I don't know if he's going to change or he's going to, keep out of the MAGA cult. Who else? Chris Christie. He should just roll away back to Jersey because nobody likes him. And the other ones like Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, and all those. They just don't have a chance. So I don't know. I really don't think the GOP does have a clear. I don't think Trump will be the nominee. I think the Republican Party they're not that stupid to put Trump again as a nominee. I hope not. DeSantis, there's no way he's going to get it. Like I said before, no Floridian politician has ever gotten the nomination of either party. So I doubt he'll get it. So my prediction will be that Biden will probably not seek it. He'll pull an LBJ. And then you're going to get somebody else, like a younger, young person, like a young governor out there to get it. So that's my prediction to it, because I don't think the Republicans have any faith for 2024. They're not ready yet.
I guess, on the betting odds, according to Real Clear Politics, right now they have Biden and Trump being the nominees. They're the heavy favorites according to the betting odds. But behind Biden would be Gavin Newsom as the next likely candidate according to the betting odds. My prediction, I think it's going to be Biden and Trump as the nominees. I don't get it. I don't, specifically Trump. I don't get how, the guy locks us down. The guy for 4 years was this massive spending, big government, clearly no different than any of the other presidents. He's exactly what you expect. The only difference is he uses a lot more juvenile speaking. He just likes to call people names. That's really the only difference. Is he has no decorum at all. I don't get how people who claim to believe in the Constitution, people who claim to believe in liberty, can still go back to this big government criminal. I view them all as criminals, and Trump is no different. And that's my prediction, though, that Trump and Biden will be the nominees. But time will tell. Neither of us have a crystal ball, so we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But that's what we do know is whoever the nominees are, the media will tell us the Republican and the Democrat nominees are the only ones that are our choices. There will be third-party candidates who won't get any airtime, and the American people will think that, we've got choices when you don't.
Exactly, yeah, and it's a valid prediction, Seth, but I don't see Biden going for a second term or being allowed a second term by the Electoral College and the establishment. I think they gave it to him because he was VP for 8 years. The same thing for George Herbert Walker Bush. He was VP for 8 years, and I think he was I think he would have won that second term if it wasn't for Ross Perot. So I don't. I think the establishment told Biden, "Okay, Grandpa, you'll get your first term as president because you deserve it. You were 8 years VP, but then after we'll find somebody else." With Trump, I don't think he played ball enough with the establishment, and that's COVID was the test, and he didn't follow the establishment procedures, and it was too late when he started locking everybody down and doing all this executive orders for mailing ballots and all that. So I think it was too late for him to play ball. You mentioned Gavin Newsom. I mean, he's too much of a rogue person, of somebody that cannot really. I think he's kind of like Trump, not willing to play ball with the establishment. Like Barack Obama, he did play ball with the establishment. That's why he got those 2 terms, because he played ball. When the establishment said, "Hey, listen, we don't want a single payer system. We'll give you this so-called Affordable Care Act with exchanges," then he just went along with it. Obama plays better ball than Gavin Newsom, and the same thing with Kamala Harris. I thought it was going to be Kamala Harris, but she's too much of something that doesn't follow by the rules and goes rogue. The same thing with Sarah Palin, for that matter. She definitely went rogue, and they don't want her. So no, I think it's going to be a quieter guy. I don't think we're ready for a female president. I don't think this country will ever be ready for a female president. You've seen it with Hillary. You saw it with Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin. And I don't think this country is ready for a female. They went for a black American because he's black. But no, not because he's black, but because he's male. And but a female, not yet. So I think, here's my prediction. It'll probably be somebody young, somebody white, somebody homosexual, who's going to be our next president.
That's leaning towards Pete Buttigieg.
No, because Pete Buttigieg, he's a Secretary of Transportation, and he hasn't really followed through. My prediction will be Jared Polis of Colorado. He's young. Okay. And he's quiet. He likes to. I think he's a guy that would play ball with the establishment, and I think he's quiet right now, as Obama. As they kept Obama kind of quiet, but that's my quiet prediction. And this,
it is kind of just thinking about this right now that we're still a year away before any primary votes start happening. This is one of the beefs I've had with. I mean, we've seen this for actually quite a long time. How the presidential elections become longer and longer, and so a lot of things can happen. So right now the betting odds say it's going to be Biden and Trump, but there's just so much time for things to change before people even go to the ballot box to vote in a primary.
Yeah, no, I mean, for Biden, I see 2 scenarios. They'll probably pull a Warren G. Harding, goes on vacation and pulls a Warren G. Harding, or an LBJ that I will not seek and I will not accept the nomination. For Trump, I don't think, even with prison, if he does serve prison time, he can still run for president, but I think he'll be in such shambles, and I don't know how their fundraising are, but I don't think their fundraising are that good, but they're better than DeSantis, but I just don't see Trump as the nominee again. I mean, the GOP is something I don't quite understand. Back in 1980, there were some in the GOP that wanted Gerald Ford to run for president, but then Ronald Reagan came. And, I said to myself, why would you want a person who was not even elected vice president, was not even elected president, and just because he has name recognition of being a president, you want him to run again? And then, comes Ronald Reagan with his golden voice of limited government and all that, which, again, in turn, it was all a lie because he's the biggest creator of federal government bureaucracies more than ever, more than Trump, Trump kind of exceeded that. So, but my point I'm trying to make is that I hope that Republicans, why are they looking forward in Trump again? Why can't they look for somebody like Reagan, which, again, you'll probably get the same BS like we did with Reagan, limited government, blah, 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 Democrats are bad. But at least they looked ahead to somebody, to a new person. But I don't know why GOP, or I don't know if it's a GOP or Republican voters. Why are they looking for Trump again? I just don't get it. I mean, the man's a loser, like Ford. They were both losers. May rest in peace, Ford, but they were all losers. And I just don't understand why they're going again with Trump. I just don't get it.
Yeah, what I think it is I think it's ultimately there's just such a large base that will, as Donald Trump said, and there have been supporters of him who have said the same thing, that he could shoot a man on Fifth Avenue and people would still support him. It's really disturbing to me, the idolatry, especially from, as a Christian, I see a lot of professing Christians just committing absolute idolatry for this guy, and it really disturbs me, disgusts me. Donald Trump is, there's this lie that Donald Trump is this outsider, which I don't know how to convince people. I mean, this guy bragged about, gaming the system, and that he's friends with all these insiders. That's how he's been able to build his businesses. And Donald Trump, prior to COVID was praising Klaus Schwab, who's the head of the World Economic Forum. And Donald Trump is one of them. He's just a brash person, and so people don't like him. So, I always hear these things that, he's got all the right enemies. There are a lot of people who hate Donald Trump who I'm not big fans of either, but that doesn't mean that Donald Trump's your guy. I mean, it's, but it gets back to one of the biggest, where I'm at is that the biggest problem is that the people are looking towards politicians to save them, and that the politicians are there to take care of them, and that's the biggest issue that I think we who believe in liberty, we need to contend with that false worldview that has taken over the American populace, that the government's there to help you. I mean, it's bringing up Reagan. Reagan said, and even though he didn't do this in action, but he said the scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Well, now it seems like everybody wants the government to be there to help them. I mean, we got this disaster in Hawaii now, and there's certainly going to be calls to have federal funding go there, and that's not what the Constitution prescribes. It does not allow the federal government to send money and for natural disasters, and but the American people, by and large, think that is the role of government, and so it's always this thing with Trump, I don't want to talk about him, but we have to because people still look towards him to save them, and that attitude for any politician, you could say, we want Vivek Ramaswamy to save us. Well, no, we don't want politicians to save us. We want liberty. We want independence. We want to be left alone from this central government.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And now with these 1,000 people plus the two major party candidates running, they're all screaming for the same voice. We want to help you. We want to do this. We want to do that. No, I don't want you to do that. The federal government is not there to assist anybody or even give aid. And now you mentioned the Hawaii tragedy with the wildfires. That's Hawaii's problem. They have a legislature, they have a governor, they have a judicial system. They have to get together and do something. So I pray for Hawaii to, for all my followers and listeners out there, I pray for Hawaii to get this through, but get this through on their own and not being dependable of the federal government. The same thing when there's a hurricane or a tornado or flooding. It's not the role of the federal government to come in and says, here, we're going to help you. No. I mean, I was more inclined to support Trump if Trump went to Puerto Rico to help the Puerto Ricans when they had their hurricane disaster, because Puerto Rico is a federal territory. Puerto Rico has more more in hand with the federal government than a state is. When I saw him throw toilet paper in Texas, I just found it kind of ludicrous to see this kind of thing. And the worst picture that I've seen, and I told it to a couple of people, the worst picture that makes me mad, boil mad, is George W. Bush looking out Air Force One after Katrina. And then, saying, oh, well, he's going to help us. No. They had Governor Blanco. They had a city. They had a Miami. They had a city mayor. They have a legislature. They have their own funding to do this. It's not the federal government's responsibility. And that's the thing, is that, you have all these 1,000 candidates coming out and saying, we're here to help you. Chris Christie says it and says, well, Trump can't do it, but I can do it better. I don't, care if you can do it 100 times better or 1,000 times better. That's not your role, Chris Christie. Your role is just to be the president of the United States and go out there on foreign affairs and maintain the peace internationally, not domestically. That's why we have governors out there. So, again, with situations like Hawaii or hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes or whatever, I see it again. Even up there in Vermont where there was flooding and Bernie Sanders was talking about getting federal assistance. I go, you know what? Look into your old pal Calvin Coolidge, native-born Vermonter Calvin Coolidge, where his native state Vermont, which that was actually his native state Vermont, when it flooded, he didn't go up there. He didn't give federal funding to Vermont. Vermont took care of itself. Vermont had a self-reliance. They were not dependable. And that's what I see now in 2024, 2020, and moving back, where we've seen this kind of dependency that we've become. And it's very sad that the American people are more dependable now of the federal government than ever before.
Yeah, and what happens too is just the way our government just is completely outside of the bounds of the Constitution. You get arguments such as, look at all this money going to Ukraine when it could be going to Hawaii, which, by the way, if I had to choose, I would rather the money go to Hawaii than Ukraine, because at least they're American citizens. But that doesn't make money going to Hawaii constitutional or right. So that's there's so much government is spending money on so many things that it doesn't have authority to spend on, and so it makes it allows for these arguments to come up that they sound good to you, but they're not good arguments. And so, I want to end all funding of Ukraine. We don't have a declaration of war. We should butt out, but that doesn't mean I want money to go towards natural disasters here either.
Well, yeah, the issue that I have that is because of the disastrous 16th Amendment. That's where you have this unprecedented spending, unconstitutional spending, more than just constitutional. It's now beyond unconstitutional, even though it's in the 16th article. But I mean, if the federal government, they have a right to spend because they have an entity. They have Congress. States have their entities. They have state legislatures. So if Congress, with their own money, passed by indirect taxations, if they want to give money to Ukraine, that's fine by me. I find it more inclined to support money going to international countries than into our own issues, because again, why would my hard-earned Florida money or Virginia money, because I live in both states, go to states like California or Hawaii when they have a natural disaster, or Louisiana for that matter? So I don't mind seeing, helping, if that money is not touched by state money and it's a federal, by the federal treasury and received and done by indirect taxation, by indirect tariffs, and that money's been appropriated correctly and done correctly and going to Ukraine or going over here, then I would say that's fine. But because of the 16th Amendment that, it's any source of income comes, then, then you have Florida money, you have Virginia money, you have Illinois money, you have Montana money going all over the world. That's why I oppose. That's why Henry Cabot Lodge, one of the last senators that really opposed international funding with the Treaty of Versailles, he said no. I mean, he wasn't going to support that because that has funding to it and that's unconstitutional. And that was even after the 16th Amendment was passed. But then came the Marshall Plan, and then everybody was on board and for funding all across Europe, and the same thing as even in the United States. So I am not inclined of any funding whatsoever, neither domestic by federal, either domestic or international as of now, because of that 16th Amendment. And I do pray that Hawaii does find the courage to lay off this dependency, which I doubt it, because they're really dependable. But I pray to all the gods that they lay off this dependency and reclaim some sovereignty on their own, because that's and every state on that matter.
Yeah, that's we should be independent. That should be what we're striving for, and every state should be striving for that. But kind of revert back to the presidential election discussion. I'm looking at and really the indictments. This is something I wonder if because what I see, these indictments keep making Trump stronger with his base, and I'm just kind of curious. I mean, normally somebody wouldn't want to be indicted for anything, but I think Donald Trump likes the attention that he gets from these indictments. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Regarding the indictments, I think it's a political game. Back in 2016, he was going to lock Hillary Clinton up, but we never saw that. Now the liberals the tables have turned, and now it's lock him up. I don't know if it's a political game for the 2024 election. He does like that limelight, like with the Stop the Steal fiasco that led to the January 6th insurrection. I mean, with Trump, you don't know what he's thinking. I think it's all a game to him. I think he's raising money off of that. Like he did with Stop the Steal. I don't think he'll be indicted. Again, if he is indicted and convicted and sent to prison, he can still run. He can still run for president. I mean, Eugene Debs ran for president in 1919 or 1920. So he can. Anybody can do that. So, but. I mean, I don't think he'll win because the Electoral College won't let him. And that's something that I want to bring up this point, Seth. This idea of a democracy, this idea of populism and democracy and every vote counts. I don't know who was the framer of the Constitution that created this popular vote for the presidential elections, but it's clouding judgment over emotional distress. And you see it in other countries where you have this popular vote, and if you don't obtain a majority, they go to second round, they go to third round, and then it's been decided by a electoral commission. Here, the popular vote means nothing. I mean, you get to vote, you have a right to vote, and you go earn that vote to vote for your candidate of your choice, and you have to follow instructions of that. But again, it doesn't matter because the Electoral College will say, okay, you voted for Bush, the state electorate says, okay, I'm going to vote for Clinton, or I'm going to vote for this guy. So it doesn't really matter. We got to lay off this democracy crap, because this country is not democracy. And I'm tired of seeing Republicans and Democrats saying we got to save our democracy, we got to restore democracy. Or, have you seen that movie 2000 Mules with Dinesh D'Souza? And, he keeps bringing up the word democracy, and Dennis Prager and even the Convention of States corrupt individuals. And it just infuriates me more that they feed on this populism. And that's why Trump's populism is going high, because they're feeding on this, that, our vote needs to count, we need to count our votes. You have somebody running in Idaho claiming we have to protect voter fraud and election integrity. Idaho's about 95% Republican. What electoral integrity are you looking for? Are you going to lock up the Republicans that are in control of the legislatures? So, it's this asinine hypocrisy that they just don't get it, and it just infuriates me every time I hear somebody say we got to protect our democracy. No, we got to protect our republic. We got to protect our Constitution, not a democracy, and that just infuriates me.
Yeah, that's something that I've have seen for a long time, and have tried to make the arguments against, is that there seems to be this idea that your right to vote is the most important. It's the most sacrosanct right there is, and it's not. I mean, I kind of view voting as kind of a privilege. It's not really a right. We used to have things, and I know that there were some places that had racist motivations behind it, which I completely am against. But the idea that property owners were the ones that voted, which makes sense to me, because the property owners are the ones paying into the system. So, should welfare recipients be allowed to vote? Well, we shouldn't be allowed to vote ourselves welfare benefits. I mean, and we're basically voting to who's going to be the best thief to steal from our neighbors to give to us. And that's what our country has become under this democracy. Democracy is, as I think it's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but it's two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. Our rights, the rights we should really care about, are our right to speech, our right to religion, our right to redress our grievances, our right to keep and bear arms, our right to due process. Those are our rights that we should care about. But there's this idea that voting, that's the most important right. Well, it's not. I would gladly if I knew giving up my right to vote meant that I had all my other rights in place, I would gladly give that up. Voting is meaningless to me. My rights are what matter to me, and we've lost this mindset. We've gotten to a place where people they just want to vote. They want their ability to vote, and that's the most important thing. And I actually am. The interesting thing about this race, you have guys like Chris Christie, who I can't stand Chris Christie, but he's saying some truthful things about Donald Trump. He was making the point about how Donald Trump, how Ivanka and Jared Kushner got this $2 billion deal from the Saudis while he was president. Whereas, the Republicans right now can only look at Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's corrupt too, but they won't look at, Trump's family and their corruption. And this is what the political mindset has created. We've got this tribalism where, your tribe will never look at the corruption within your own tribe, but you'll always see the corruption from the other tribe, and vice versa. And then you got Ron DeSantis, who, again, a guy I don't trust at all, but, he said something truthful about the 2020 election. He was on NBC, and he was asked about, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? And he said, yeah, Joe Biden's the president. But he went on to explain how, Donald Trump's the one who locked us down, and Donald Trump's the one who gave us the mail-in ballots that he's claiming is what cost him the election. Well, why don't you look at yourself, Donald Trump, for, you think the election was stolen from you? Well, you put in place all the things that you claim led to it being stolen from you. So Ron DeSantis said a lot of true things that I agreed with, and, it doesn't mean I support him, but that is the fun thing about this election, is seeing some of these candidates say truthful things about Donald Trump.
No, going back to what you were saying about, the right to vote, you say it's a privilege. Yeah, no, you're right. I do think the vote is a privilege, not a right, but they made it into a right based on the 15th Amendment. And you're right. Should welfare recipients be allowed to vote because they're into the system? I don't think so. I think there's certain people that should not have the right to vote, like welfare recipients, prisoners, convicts, hopefully Trump in that matter, when he's a convicted felon. But on the sense of the right to vote, the way that I see it is that all citizens have a right to vote. It's not the most sacred right, because I think the Bill of Rights are more sacred than the right to vote. But it's that, you get your right. You get your right to vote, and your right to vote should not be denied, unlike what happened in the 1870s and throughout the 1950s and 60s, where there were, many black Americans were being denied the right to vote, and Native Americans in Montana and Wyoming and Colorado, even California, they were being denied the right to vote. But nowadays, your vote's not being denied. It's just that legislatures are changing their manners of how votes to be counted. I'll give you in Arizona, they had a Supreme Court case where they said, we're going to change the ways they're going to change certain aspects of polling places and absentee ballot boxes. And if you want to go directly to a polling place, you're going to have to go to your polling place that's in your district, in your area. But if you're going to vote mail-in ballot, you can drop it in any other mail-in ballot box all across your city, all across your county and city. And I said to myself, okay, wouldn't that be more reasonable to say, if you have to go personally to your polling place to vote exactly in your polling place, but even your mail-in ballot, drop it in a box that it's closer in your district area? That's what happens when we have politicians that always don't do a good job in doing things, and that's where you create this dismay and havoc where, our votes are not being counted because my mail-in ballot was placed in this place in Sedona, but I vote in Humo, or I vote in here. So, politicians have created this dismay where, they still say you have the right to vote, but, your vote will not be counted if it's not done correctly. Now, when I was living in Virginia and I had to circle my ballot, I had to make sure that I had to circle it correctly, and any little inch of the pencil that went out of the box or the circle was automatically that it won't be counted because it went off into the out of the box or circle. I mean, again, voters have to follow instructions, and it's a privilege. You have to follow instructions for that right to vote. You cannot say, "Oops, I went off." Here, you can request a new one, but then don't say, "I went off the line." Submit your ballot, and if it doesn't get counted, well, why did you speak up? Why didn't you say anything? So, this thing that your vote is to be counted. States still have that right to not count votes if it's not done properly. You're not being denied your right to vote. You can still go mail-in ballot or in person. So I just think that this brouhaha of populism, democracy, and your vote to be counted is creating too much dismay and chaos by politicians, both state and federal legislators, and I just think it's way too much, and we need to lay off this. And candidates now in 2024, they've really made this thing about protecting democracy, and on both the left and the right. And it's just, Trump has said it, and I'm like, this, even Trumpers have said it, and I say, wow, does he sound more like Woodrow Wilson, or am I just hallucinating here? So that's one thing that I can't stand for 2024. This thing of populism that I totally despise.
Yeah, and it all gets back to, the point that the federal government has taken all this quote-unquote power. And the reason they have power is because the people have given them power, and we need to take that power back. If there wasn't so much money flowing through Washington, D.C., people wouldn't get so worked up about these elections. It's so important to get your tribe in office. If you're a Republican, you need to get the Republicans in office so that they give you the money that's stolen from the rest of the people. And if you're a Democrat, you need to get Democrats elected so they take the money and divvy it out to you that's stolen from the rest of us. This is the thing, and there's nobody really talking about stopping this. There's nobody talking about getting rid of this Leviathan centralized government. I mean, they're talking about, one of the things that I've kind of seen with conservatives and Republicans is that they talk a big game about how they believe in limited government, but to them, what limited government means is running the big government more efficiently. So they're gonna expand the size of the government, but they'll do it at a slower rate than the Democrats, and that's just, it sickens me, because this is the problem. We need to close down every unconstitutional agency, which, hint, it's almost all of them. And this is, there's nobody talking about that, about, getting the government into its proper authority. And that's what needs to be done, is the government needs to be returned to its proper constitutional authority. And, to go back to, our conversation last week about the Convention of States, the Constitution, the problem isn't the Constitution. The problem is we don't follow it. And, there's nobody really making that the central issue, that we need to get the government cut down to size with staying within its proper authority.
Yeah, and to that point of, seeking favors from state to state, for example, like now Hawaii, we'll probably see the congressional delegation ask for federal funds to help the victims of the wildfires, or in Louisiana with Katrina, or in Florida with Ian, where you see Governor DeSantis be all state sovereignty and state sovereign against the federal government, but then he takes out his hand and, like Oliver Twist, hello, can I have some more, please? So, it's this hypocrisy that, and, somebody, I spoke to somebody that he says, how come blue states are the ones supporting red states? And I said to him, it's both ways. Red states are also supporting blue states. It's, it goes, because the thing is that, the majority of red states' congressional delegation are seeking those funds from those blue states. So it's not just, why they're doing it, because they're playing that 17th Amendment, that game of, saying, okay, I need $25 million for this, I'll give you $50 million for that, and blah, blah, blah. California, you get your railway from LA to Vegas, or LA to San Francisco. And Florida, you'll get your Bright Line from Miami to Orlando. In Illinois, you'll get your train from Springfield to Chicago, and so on and so on. So it's not really blue states supporting red states. It's everybody. Red states supporting blue, blue supporting red, Republican, Democrat, and it just sickens me that people don't see it, that it's this power struggle, that whoever is in control in Washington D.C., they'll play favorites. Say, okay, so for Illinois, you'll get a study on the wombats or whatever, some weird research facility in Illinois or wherever. And it's this political game, trying to cope with one another. And Trump did it with when there was some natural disasters with Texas and Florida, and he didn't give two craps about Puerto Rico. The same thing with Obama. He went up to New Jersey when Chris Christie was governor, but New Jersey has always been a blue state, and he went up there. I go back and tell this story of Calvin Coolidge in 1927 with the Mississippi flood. When the Mississippi flooded parts of Arkansas and Mississippi, and Thaddeus Callaway, a senator from Arkansas, criticized Coolidge for not coming down to examine the situation. Calvin Coolidge didn't say anything. Calvin Coolidge said, it's not my role. It's your state legislature's role to look at the problem, and you got yourself the funding. I cannot, I can give you some funding, but I'm not going to give you a lot of funding because that's not my role. And then when Vermont flooded, he didn't go up to Vermont either. So, why don't we look at the model of Calvin Coolidge of, not really being the model of the savior. He's not, Calvin Coolidge didn't play favorites, didn't play privilege. And that's who we need. We need a candidate that doesn't play favorites, doesn't give privilege to one state and not the other. So that's the candidate I'm looking for. I'm looking for a candidate who will not play favorites, who will not give privilege. Basically, either a Calvin Coolidge or a Grover Cleveland. That's the candidate I'm looking for.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that we're not going to see that in the federal elections, and that's why I say that the most important thing, that there might be reasons to vote for state and local officials. If they're willing to stand up to the federal government and say, hey, we don't want your help, we're going to take care of ourselves, that's the way I think forward is. We need to look for people at the state and local level who are saying, we don't want the federal assistance, we're going to take care of ourselves. And, I don't see the federal government, the federal elections as meaning anything anymore because it's just corrupt to the core.
Yeah. And, you mentioned focus on state elections, but even with that we spoke the last time, Convention of States, and they were saying to nullify federal legislation, but they're proposing 3/5 of the states to nullify a federal law. You lose your sovereign state power when you involve other states. It's one state, if one state wants to nullify federal law, that's fine. Or another state like we had in 1798 when we had Kentucky and Virginia do it. But, when you have the Calhoun plan of 3/5 of the states, you lose your state sovereignty. You lose your sovereign rights. So that's not the way to go. And, my last thought is that, I'm probably not going to vote in this election because there is no candidate right now that gives that confidence in me of limited government, of self-reliance, not being dependable, not being a Calvin Coolidge or a Grover Cleveland. So I will abstain. Now, before the show, I want to put this question that you questioned me. If somebody had a gun to my head and they had a bag, if somebody put a gun to my hand and says, who would you vote for? I says, you know what? Just take me out of my misery. You're not going to get my vote because there's nobody here. You want to commit murder on me? Commit murder and you'll go to jail because you're not going to get my vote. I'm not voting. There's nothing you can do, but I'm not voting for anybody this year. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah. If I had a gun to my head, I'd say, give me a bag full of all the names, all the 1,000 plus names, and I'm going to make sure to dig deep in there and find somebody that nobody knows about.
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to give your vote away to some random person. Me, I'd rather have the person go to jail for killing me, and he doesn't get my vote.
Yeah, it's just, if I did vote, it would only be basically to just vote. And this is the big thing is people need to stop. Like, even if, like I said, at the state and local level, there might be reasons to vote. And even there, only if there's a candidate who's saying what I was saying, that they're willing to stand up to the government and say, we don't want your help. Even at that level, is people need to stop viewing these people as saviors. And even if you do vote, I mean, don't go into it thinking, stop propping up these people as heroes or saviors. They're not. Mm-hmm. You need to take care of yourself. So that's the mentality that we need to get rid of, is this view of the politicians taking care of us. And that's one of the biggest problems I have with the Trump movement, is that there is this very disturbing savior complex that they have with him, and it's really disturbing.
Yeah, and with that note, my last thoughts is, pick a candidate that really wants to help you be self-reliant, self-independent, not be dependable. Don't be dependent of the federal government. Don't seek a candidate because he talks nice, he's got the nice wavy hair and all that. And just, pick a candidate that is willing to leave you alone and trust you with your decisions and trust you with everything, and be, a little more self-reliant than dependable. And like I said, look up Calvin Coolidge and Grover Cleveland, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. The type of candidate that I'm looking for, that's the type of candidate that we need for America: a bourbon Democrat or a keep cool with Coolidge.
Yeah. Somebody who's gonna kind of be in the background, and we don't even realize we have a president. I mean, that's why I still admire George Washington, because he didn't even go to Congress for he used to write his State of the Union speech and just give it in writing, and he gave his farewell address through writing, and we don't need the pomp and circumstance. Mm-hmm. We need to just have the government be in the background as if we don't even realize it's there.
Exactly. And with that note said, we'll probably continue this discussion for 2024 as we get closer and see if our predictions come close, and we'll keep you updated. So from all of us, Seth, it's always a pleasure, and we bid you a farewell and good night, and we'll come back on Sunday.
Good night.